Today's podcast is sponsored by Dingus Fire Company. Trucks, tools, tradition. Check them out on the web at dingusfire.com. You know the drill. I'm not even going to say it. I'm just going to roll it. You're listening to Views from the Jumpseat Podcast. Bunker up. Buckle in. It's time for the show to begin. One thing remains constant in the fire service is that we start day one in the jump seat. So if you're a chief officer, welcome back. If you're the day one probationary, welcome aboard. It's time for Jumpseat Radio. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Jumpseat Radio, the podcast that searches through the interwebs, figures out who has the most downloads, the most reach, the most awesomest podcast we've ever done. And I bring you back on the radio. Frank, I haven't told you this, but you still have the number one most downloaded podcast of Jumpseat Radio's 200,000 downloads. You are the number one guest. Welcome back to Jumpseat Radio.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me, but also thank you for having me back on. Man, it's always great just to be talking with you and to be able to have these types of conversations that we can kind of share and talk to some other people. It's fun. I know you know this about me, but I listen to podcasts a lot, and I drive down. I listen to yours, and I drive down, the highway, and as I'm listening, it's funny, you get lost, and for a short period of time, you think you're in the room having this conversation with them.
Man,
whoever's speaking, and that's the best part about it.
I think that's what draws me to you, Frank, is because every time I talk to you, just because you've got such deep roots in my area and you're such a humble individual, you just I think that's what draws people to you and your message. And this is Ryan talking, because when you were down here in Charleston, I wish we would have recorded the 4 hours of talking that we had, because it's like, it's so real, it's so applicable to everybody. It's just freaking phenomenal, Frank. So welcome back to Jumpseat Radio. And there's been some couple changes in your life since you were last on. You want to share with those?
Well, yeah, I'm speaking full time right now. I don't even know where to start. Things are very, very good. And you and I had just briefly this conversation before we went live, where I said, I'm just very happy with where things are right now. Retired from the fire service, going full time into speaking. Been traveling everywhere, not just throughout the U.S., but Europe and overseas, and doing a lot of leadership, team development training, doing keynotes, seminars, workshops. And I build my schedule around things that are important to my family and I, not just holidays, because I think I've worked every Christmas that I can possibly imagine for one reason or another for 27 years.
Wow.
And so now I am, I build my schedule around my family, and I this about me, but I coach my boys' baseball teams. And, that's a passion of mine, to have that time with them, 8 and 10 years old. Nicholas, my youngest one, I had the honor of coaching his all-star team and his travel team, and Frankie's on travel. And for the first time in a very long time, they're right now on the same baseball team.
Nice.
And so in addition to their travel, so I would say probably 5 nights a week we're on a baseball diamond, and it's not just me and my boys. My wife is there hitting ground balls, catching balls, coaching, because she, played sports her entire life. And it's just a great family experience that I say I'm so thankful. Thankful to have that time with them.
Your best social media post ever, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember what it was. It shows your wife hitting grounders maybe to your boys, and you're like, well, yeah, maybe I'm not the best baseball player in my family.
Yeah, I say, now you know where they really get it from. The secret's out. Yeah. No, listen, I went to speak out in St. Augustine. And if you've ever been to St. Augustine, Florida, I was speaking for 3 days out there. The beaches in that area are like the infield of baseball diamonds. It's just compact sand, and it's so we were literally playing baseball on the beaches, hitting ground balls, and it's, I'm hitting the balls, one's catching, hitting the other one as a cutoff, then throwing it to my wife, and people are walking by, and guys are like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. Your whole family is involved. We just love it. I just got a phone call today. I'm sharing this with you because it just came on. I just got a phone call today from someone that has coached for 22 years and has just spent one day with both my boys yesterday coaching them. And he called me up and he said, I just want to tell you something. He goes, your boys are special.
Nice.
They're special baseball players. He says, and the old one, his arm is amazing. He's a lefty. I'm sure he's going to play in college. He goes, the young one, I'm going to tell you right now, that kid, he's got something.
Nice.
And he's got something I don't see all the time. He just called out of the blue and just said this to me literally a half hour ago. And my wife and I had him on speakerphone. My wife and I, we were in tears. This isn't a guy that we're paying for lessons. This
Right.
is a guy that is one of his coaches that just out of the blue called to share this with us. And those types of things. And it's not, trust me when I tell you, we don't care about winning baseball games.
Right.
I care about developing my kids to be successful in life. That's just the sport that they play. But knowing how hard they had to work to get good because they're not naturally gifted,
Right.
that's the part that when I speak in my seminars, Ryan, I use some baseball analogies because I talk about my kids, not just my blood kids, my sons. I talk about the kids that I coach and how very few of them are naturally gifted and talented. They just outwork the other teams. And it's the same thing we need to do to build a successful team anywhere.
And I never tell anybody what we're going to talk about, and I'm surprised you didn't ask, Frank, when I bring people on the podcast. But you're segueing great into my topic I want to talk to you about today. So Jumpseat Radio is basically based around jumpseat level firefighters, street level firefighters. Well, something weird has been happening to my listening core group of listeners is they're becoming officers. They're becoming the lieutenants, the sergeants, the captains. I want to talk to you about your key subject of stepping up and leading. How do we start that transition from the jump seat to the front seat? How does a firefighter listening start that transition?
I'm going to tell you right now that it's the biggest challenge we have in the fire service. When I became an officer, it pretty much happened like this. Okay, Frank, you're getting sworn in as an officer tomorrow night. Congratulations. The very next day I show up to work. Now you're riding in this seat. No training, no preparation.
Right.
No, let me teach you how to write reports. Let me teach you how to give a radio report. Let me teach you how to be a first due engine company officer. None of that. It was like, wow. And it's very easy to say, well, if you don't know, and I don't mean me, but if somebody doesn't know the job, then they hadn't been paying attention up to that point. It's very easy to say that.
Right.
And you're right to a certain degree, but at the same time, it's almost like coaching a baseball team and saying, okay, I know you never threw a pitch, but tomorrow you're starting on the mound for us.
That's a great analogy.
Well, right. And who's wrong? The coach is wrong.
Right.
The manager's wrong because they didn't prepare people properly. However, my kids go out and they practice 3 days a week when they don't have practice, and they throw 25 pitches in preparation for the day when their coach says, by the way, we noticed that you've gotten better. We're going to start you on the mound on Saturday. So that's what we need to do in the fire service. You need to take your 25 practice pitches every day. You need to go out and do the things you need to do. And you need to, and this is really important, Ryan, really important. You need to train with urgency to be prepared for the job. And what I mean by that is too many people out there, what do? When they train, they go out, let's just take a search and rescue drill. I've used this analogy before. I can ask right now, tell me what your last 2 or 3 search and rescue drills in your fire station were like. And everybody could pretty much answer the same thing.
Right. We
darkened out our mask, or we put wax paper in, shut the light off, put a mannequin in a room, moved a few little furniture around. One goes right, one goes left, find a mannequin, pull the mannequin out of the room, and the drill's over. And we all feel good about ourselves. Now, that's good because you're practicing the skill, but you didn't practice it with urgency.
Right.
What if you do the same thing and then take 10 or 12 flights of stairs, on air, and get a little tired, work up your heart rate, work down your air a little bit, then move to another station, and then say, now we're timing it. And you have 2.5 minutes to find a mannequin and get out. Why do we do that? Because you're going to be in a situation where you say, we have 2.5 minutes before our alarm goes off and we have to start making our way out. So we have 2.5 minutes to get this thing. Now there's urgency to it. When you train with urgency, you're preparing for real success, because there's going to be urgency. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be obstacles. And you're not going to, it's easy to control your breathing when you're in the fire station. And then all of a sudden, when you're out there in the real world and you don't even realize that you're sucking up your air twice as fast as you normally do, these types of things we need to train for. So, the two-part answer to your question is, one, train for when you train and prepare your team, prepare for urgency. But two, prepare yourself. So don't wait for someone to come up and say, all right, now that you're an officer, you need to do this, 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 and this. Pay attention to what your officers do. See them, how they run their drills and enter stuff into the logbooks or the computer. I hope you're ambitious enough to say to your officer, hey, Lieutenant or Cap, you're on the list. If it's okay, I'd like to enter some information in the next report and learn how to do it. And I hope that they're smart enough to say, yeah, let me show you how to do it.
Right.
That's what we started doing, Ryan, at the end, because we started. What happened on our job was, if Ryan was getting promoted and you were a firefighter under my command, if you were getting promoted, as soon as you got promoted, you were going to get sent to another station and another house and another group.
Yep.
So we, as deputy chiefs, started to say, it doesn't make sense. We're all sending each other people that aren't ready to do the job. So let's prepare them. If you're next on the list, we move you to where you can be mentored by an officer that can teach you all the things you need to know to be an officer. So as soon as you're ready to do it, you've already been doing it. So, if you combine preparation, self-preparation, with training with urgency, those two things together are going to make you not just a better leader, but it's going to make you a stronger team, because you're preparing them for the real world.
I think you just nailed it, as always. I mean, you always nail it, Frank. But I really think that if you're waiting until you get on that promotional list to start the process, I really think you're behind the curve, so to speak. I really think it comes down to us as jump seat firefighters to start paying attention. And I tell you something that you kind of touched on there a little bit, Frank, is I'm getting ready to make captain, getting ready to have my own house, getting ready to have my own crews. I think when we're drilling like that, one of these times that we're doing it, I'm not going to be in charge for that drill. I'm going to find someone who's getting close to either making that transition to lieutenant or captain, and I'm going to let them lead it. And maybe it's something we can do as we move forward. Maybe we can take a step back in introducing those folks to that situation. Because I use the analogy all the time, Frank, is I'm 40 pounds overweight and 45 years old. I'm the next statistic. And what happens if I'm that statistic and now you've got to make some decisions while we're together?
Yeah. Well, it's a very, very good point. And I loved doing that and talking to certain players on my team and saying, they maybe took a class or a seminar or had a passion for a certain thing and were very good at something. And I would ask them to come in and talk to our members about what they knew. I also liked assigning informal mentors,
right?
Where I would take a person with, that had the ambition, that understood the mission, that had some kind of a training background to a certain degree, where they had the ability to communicate, whatever it is. But I would ask them to help mentor a new firefighter. And I talk about this in my classes a lot, Ryan, where it would really make me happy when I would walk out of my office at 7:30 at night. They've already trained for more than 3 hours over the course of the day. They've already done their housework. They've already finished their reports. This is their downtime, but I see the person I assigned as a mentor working with a new firefighter or firefighters with a piece of equipment on the apparatus floor, doing their own drill, no officer in sight.
Nice.
And by the way, when I would see that, I would always, 100% of the time, say, hey, I'm really proud of you. I'm proud of both of you for taking the time to educate yourself, to try to become better, to learn this equipment. What you're doing right now, I love seeing it. I hope I see more of it. And what do you think the likelihood is of me seeing more of that after saying that? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Ryan, you know what? You know why people work? People work for either time, money, security, recognition, to belong to a team, or to make a difference.
Why do you think
I
we have
can't
such a
offer
hard
you.
time with that?
I don't know.
Why do you think leaders have a hard time saying, "Hey, great job"? I mean,
Thank you for asking that question, by the way, but finish your thought. Thank you, because I just had this conversation with my wife 2
no,
hours ago.
I just don't get it, Frank. I mean, I have one of my guys, they made this fantastic save of a car crash victim, saved the person's life, and they got put in for accommodations for medals, and their bosses got mad at them. I mean,
Yeah.
were you beat as a child? I mean, what is wrong with you?
Listen. Honestly, I'm not kidding you. 2 hours ago, I just said to my wife, I don't know why it's so hard for people to say good job or thank you or something kind. I don't know why it's so hard, because I love doing it, because it means something to that person, and when they deserve it. I mean, I don't go around trying to find praise where praise shouldn't be given, but when it's deserved, say good job, say thank you. But I think to your question, why don't people do it? This is what I think. I think it's fear, greed, or ego. I think it is, I'm afraid of someone else making me look like I'm not good enough by outshining me. So it's fear. It's greed for the same reason. I want the attention on me. I'm the officer. I need the spotlight on me. Or, ego. And it all falls into the same exact category. It's flawed leadership. You said something about me just to introduce me today when you referred to me as humble. Honestly, when you said that, that made me very, very happy, because I think that's one of the most important qualities that a leader needs to have, is humility. Because here's the truth. I'm going to go back to baseball for a second. The last 3 tournaments that my teams played in, we won the championship.
Nice.
Okay? The last 3 tournaments, we won the championship. You know what I did during each one of those games? Nothing. I'm not on the field. I sat in the dugout and I said, good job. Nice hit. Great throw. Take 2. I didn't do anything. I didn't win anything. The boys on the field won it. And I don't know why it's so hard for people to not grasp that concept, but any single time you succeed on the fire ground, you succeeded because your team succeeded. And if you happen to be the leader of that team, you better give credit where credit is deserved. Because, I mean, people are out there busting their humps, trying to make some wonderful things happen out there in the most tragic times ever. And we're going to come back and not even say good job. Are they going to make mistakes? I've never had a perfect job yet, Ryan. I don't know about you. I've never had a perfect job.
If we wouldn't have sent our captain to the hospital, they would have been perfect. But it's so funny that you say that, because the most memorable part of me making a rescue pretty much by myself there about a year or so ago was by the time the battalion chief got there, we had water on the fire and the victim on the front lawn. And he came up and he's like, wow, man, fellas, how'd you all do that? Congratulations. That's fantastic. I mean, I'm over there sucking an oxygen tank and a water bottle because we made it happen. But I swear, you hit the nail on the head. That praise from my battalion chief was worth gold. And it just so happens that I have it recorded on an audio track, and it's even more that I can go back and rehear it and re-listen to it. So
it's a beautiful thing. Most people never heard good job, thank you, or I'm proud of you in their life.
Right.
I've heard it, from my parents, but, I haven't heard it to a point where it was overused. I've heard it, enough that it made me value it.
Right.
I tell my kids all the time I'm proud of them. I told them on the way to school, I dropped off at school today, and I said, boys, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of how well you're doing in school and how well you're doing in sports. I mean, that was one of the very last things that I told them before they got out of the car. And when they get out of the car, they keep saying, "Dad, roll up the windows," because I always sing as they get out of the car. I start singing a song to embarrass them. And on the way there, Nikki's going, "Dad, don't sing today. You can't sing," because all the teachers or any other kids are out there, and I got a terrible voice, right? So, but I say, "Nicholas, do you know why I sing?" He says, "No." I said, "I sing because there's going to be a day when you get older where you're going to look back and you guys are going to sit down when you're, teenagers or even older than that, and you're going to say, 'Do you remember how Dad used to always sing when we got out? That was so annoying.' And you're going to wish that I was there to sing to you. That's why I sing." I said, "So just enjoy it." He goes, all right, I get it, but Dad, please don't sing."
I used to take my Shih Tzu with me when I took my son to junior high, and every time he would leave, I'd make her start howling like a greyhound or like. And it's so funny for now. He's 26 years old. He's like, "Man, I just remember that so vividly." That's great. We've got to step aside from the podcast to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Dingus Fire Equipment, trucks, tools, tradition. Nick's been a huge supporter of the podcast and of the fire service. Make sure to head over to dingusfire.com. We also have to give a huge shout out to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. Jumpseat Radio is a proud member of the Chief Miller media family. You can check him out on all the social media platforms and at chiefmillerapparel.com. Hint, hint, hint. We've got Jumpseat Radio apparel coming soon. Compliments of chiefmillerapparel.com. So pretty soon you'll be able to check out some merch, Jumpseat merch. That's an inside track. Now back to Frank. All right, Frank, let's give some takeaways here. How does one start doing? All right, I'm gonna do some role playing here with you. All right, I'm the grumpy old captain that has never been rewarded or awarded my entire life as a career. I'm waning down towards retirement. How can we start influencing those folks on giving praise? Is that something? And I've got my suggestion. I want to hear yours first. But how can we start that evolution of making sure that we tell those folks great job or thank you?
You start by telling them.
Right.
Yeah, you start by actually telling them, because I had a situation where a guy that I had a tremendous amount of respect for, who I think I've learned a lot from in my career. He never got promoted, and he should have.
Right.
He definitely should have, but he never got promoted. He retired at the rank of firefighter, and I was his deputy chief. And the last 6 months of his career, he was coming to work bitter, sour, angry, making comments at lineup about, this whole, this "I hate this place" type of
Right.
vibe coming off of him, which often happens. And when it got to the point where he would do it even when I was walking through the area. He didn't care who was there, in other words.
Right.
So I could see it was getting out of control. So I pulled him up into my office, and I said to him, I said, "Listen, I just want to tell you something. I know that I have probably learned more from you over the course of the time we've worked together than you have from me. I think you're the best truck company operator we have on the job. I think when we lose you, we're losing a great officer, a tremendous amount of knowledge, and we're going to be a weaker team without you." I said, "So I'm real sorry that you're going. But that being said, I'm also very concerned about the things I hear you saying every day I walk into the fire station." And I gave him some examples. And I said, "That's not the same guy that I've known for the past 25 years. I said, and quite honestly, I can't allow it to happen.
Wow.
So first thing I need to ask you is everything okay at home?" And he said, yeah, no, everything's fine. I said, "Well, what's bothering you? Because if it's something I could fix, I want to help fix it."
Bam.
And he said, a little bit upset that he never got promoted, a little bit upset with certain other things. He confided in me some personal things. And I said, "Listen, there's nothing I can do to control any of that stuff. But there was a time recently where you told me," and this is why it's important to have conversations with people, Ryan. "But there was a time when you told me that it was very important for you that when you left the fire service, that the people you worked with were taken care of. Do you still feel that way? He says, absolutely. I said, well, then I need you to help me do that, because when you leave, all that knowledge and talent leaves with you.
Wow.
And I need you for the next 6 months to help me share that information you have with them, because then they're better equipped. I said, I need you. I know you're not an officer by rank, but in my mind, you've always been one. And I need you to be that same guy to these new firefighters, so when you leave, some of this information can stay with them. I need this. Can I count on you? And he says, you can count on me. And the next few months, he became the same guy I remember him being for 25 years.
Bam.
So I think a lot of it is having these conversations. You won't solve every problem with a conversation, but I think you resolve a lot of them. But also, what I talk about in Step Up and Lead in the book and in the seminar is when you do critique people properly, if you begin, and this is in the office, right? This is private conversation. If you begin and end with a compliment, like me telling him what I appreciated about him and how much I learned from him, and me ending again telling him how he's always been an officer in my eyes. You begin and end on a compliment. That criticism in the middle about the comments he's been saying every day I walk in doesn't sting so much, but I'm still making the point. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes it's my wife she teaches the class Crucial Conversations, and you just nailed it. I mean, that was a crucial conversation in bringing his animosity down. You're not there to scold him. Matter of fact, you're there to praise him. I really think you're right. It takes us having some very hard conversations. Our retired assistant chief came back. We had a full beard. That's another story. But he came back, and I had to tell him thank you, because he pulled me in the office and said, Ryan, you need to fix your attitude, because people don't want to work on the ambulance with you, and I need it to stop right now. And I was like, oh, that hurt.
Yeah.
That one hurt a lot. But I fixed it.
But you know what? Like you said, and that's great that your wife is teaching that class. What age group does she teach it to?
Oh, adults, hospital people.
Well, I'll tell you what. But let me tell you, that's a fantastic. They should teach that class to everybody.
Oh.
Because 3 types of courage that serve us well, right? You got physical courage and moral courage, but you also have courageous communication, and to be able to have the difficult conversations that are needed during challenging times. People, I always get this. I'm sure you do too. But I get these people that will reach out to me on social media or come up to me after a class and say, "Hey, I have a challenge at work," and they're always telling me about that person at work.
Right.
And you're only getting half the story, so the half of the story I'm getting may not be the whole story. But I always ask them the same question: have you ever, everything you just told me about this individual, have you ever had this conversation with that person?
Wow.
Because if you haven't, you can't resolve an issue if somebody doesn't even know an issue exists. So having the difficult conversation, and what I found in my life, the difficult conversation rarely turns out to be that difficult anyway.
No.
You just thought it was going to be.
Yeah, you tell yourself stories. I read Rising Strong from Brene Brown, and she calls it I'm gonna have to bleep this one out later. She calls it the shitty first draft. She's like, you tell yourself the shitty first draft. You make it up. This is going to be a horrible thing. You walk in and, oh, by the way, it really wasn't that bad.
Listen, I'm sorry. That's a pretty great analogy, by the way. And I hope you don't, maybe you could bleep that out, but don't take it out.
No, right.
I'll call it the crappy first draft. I've written 10 books, but I've had, I think, 7 published.
Wow.
And I've had crappy first drafts of every single one of them.
Absolutely.
Every one of them.
Yep.
And like Step Up and Lead is it's a top selling leadership book. The first draft of Step Up and Lead was cringeworthy for me.
Right.
Because I went back and I would read it and think, you know what? I didn't say it the way I'm supposed to say it. And I think that's important that you do that sometimes. Maybe you could talk to somebody, like I talk to my wife when I'm having a challenge with a person, and I'll say, look, I'm going to talk to this person. Here's what I'm going to say. Boom, boom, boom. And my wife would say, well, you might not want to say it that way.
Right.
And here's why. And so that's our first draft conversation. And I'll be like, you're right. You're right. And sometimes doing that just helps you think through things. But I also think, by the way, I mean, you can have a conversation with a person. Please have it in person, or at the very least over the phone.
Right.
Don't do it over text.
Yeah.
Don't do it over text. It never, ever, ever is going to come through. You know, if you want to start a fight with somebody, just text. It's like start a fight on Facebook. It's just a two-step process. One, post your opinion, and two, wait. Right? It's the same thing with text. Write something.
Right.
It's going to cross the wrong way, and then you're going to get a fight out of it. And their text is going to become coming across to you the wrong way. Just talk to someone, because your tone of your voice is different than the tone of characters on a phone.
I had a firefighter come to me with marital issues, and he kept saying, well, she keeps sending me these messages. I'm like, first thing you need to do is tell her, I'm not communicating via these means. If you want to talk, either call and or meet me here. And it's like, he was a younger guy, and he was like, man, I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, you are so spot on about that. The biggest fights my wife and I have are over text messages.
All the time. And, you know, it's funny because I had another firefighter one time was going through personal issues. He came into my office. I didn't know what it was at first, but he came in and we started talking. And he said, yeah, I'm having some challenges. I said, yeah, with your marriage? He goes, it's that obvious. I said, yeah, it is, because you're married.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Everybody that's married is going to have challenges, because, you know, what a marriage is, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all. But marriage is, in a sense, it's a collision of histories.
It is.
You know, just like a partnership in business, and just like 5 firefighters that are working in a station together for the first time that never knew each other. It's a collision of histories, and with that will come conflict. And with conflict comes how people deal with it. And how do you deal with conflict? How do I deal with conflict? Could be different. Some people need to win all the time. I worked for a guy like that. I worked for I think 5 chiefs in my time. 4 of them I work for again tomorrow. But one of them needed to win every conflict. He needed to win every single conflict. So it wasn't even worth getting into a discussion with that individual. You're never going to win. You're just going to make an enemy.
Right.
You know, so some people are like that. They need to win. So there's a winner and a loser. Some people ignore it. They try to avoid it. That's not the right way to deal with it either, because then, you know, a small mountain becomes a large one. But then the right way to deal with conflict is through compromise. Compromise. Is there a way we can both feel good about the outcome? And if we could find that way and work together, and that's how, in my opinion, one of the most important ways to make a marriage work.
Right.
Just the same thing about make any partnership work. Compromise. Put your ego aside. Understand that the best ideas will not always be yours. Be humble enough to understand that other people have talent, skills, and ability too, and utilize it. And anyone that's ever coached, and this is why, by the way, I use coaching analogies, not just firefighting analogies when I teach. Anyone that ever coaches would know, if you coached a football team and you had a kid who had the strongest arm, the greatest leadership ability, knew how to read a defense, knew how to get people pumped up in the locker room, and you made him your punter, you put him in the wrong position.
Right.
Right? Now, don't get me wrong. I want a punter that has talent, skills, and understands how to do a lot of those things. But the point being, put the right person in the right position and understand maybe they're better than you at that. But take your ego out of the way. I remember hearing one of Roger Staubach's earlier coaches, I think it might have been in the Navy, is either high school or his Navy coach, had said the best coaching job I had ever done in my life was to not try to coach Roger Staubach. He said, because there's nothing I could do to teach him how to play the way he played the game.
Right.
So I just let him play that way. That's powerful.
It is powerful. And I tell you, you're kind of hitting another nail on the head that I want to kind of swing to. And this is something that you've covered today. Is I'm getting ready to make captain, and I am nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs because I'm getting kicked out of my station. I will be out away from my guys. And I call my station the Band of Misfits. We're like the land of unwanted toys because nobody wants us in their station. So we use another term, but I really can't say on the radio. It's so funny that our band of misfits have done some really good jobs on some really bad fires lately. But it's like as I
Yeah.
cast off from my comfort zone, I'm going to have a new group, and all of a sudden I'm in the high seat. I want to hear your suggestions of how do I start in the first 2 to 3 shifts to kind of start making that transition easier. This is
First of all, I love your
complete.
analogies with the cats and the Rocketeers. You're talking to a city boy, right? I mean, I grew up with a view of the New York City skyline, and you know, rocking chairs. We didn't have many of them around. But listen, I'll tell you, anything. First of all, it's really important to note this. Anything that seems like it's going to be a challenge, you overcome by doing the things you need to do.
Right.
To be successful in that position. I have a friend that used to say, and he's brilliant in sales, brilliant salesman. And he had written a book called Now You Know. Ryan Chamberlain's his name. I figure I'd give him a plug. Right now, anybody in the sales industry wants to look up Ryan Chamberlain's Now You Know. But he says in that book that most people try to figure it all out before they take action.
Wow.
What they haven't figured out is the way to become good is to take action. And then you kind of figure it out more by doing it than by thinking about preparing for it. So, all right, so I'm about to make a transition into a new position. The first thing I want to do is educate myself to the best of my ability. What we love and what I love about the fire service more than anything is we are fantastic at gathering information and making information available for anyone that wants it. Now, you've probably heard this your whole life. Everybody listening to this has probably heard this saying, blank is the best teacher. What's the best teacher?
Right.
Experience.
Yep.
Experience is the best teacher. We've heard it our whole life. It's wrong. Experience is not the best teacher. It's a great teacher. It's a valuable teacher, and it's an important teacher. But other people's experience is the best teacher.
There you go.
Because why would I want to become a captain and learn everything firsthand when I could learn from the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that did it before me in the forms of books, a video, a seminar, a magazine article, a podcast, whatever it is. I could learn things that they've done to become successful, and now I don't have to make the same mistakes that they're going to share with me that they made. We got near miss reports. We got firefighter fatality reports. Why would I not read these things? So read these things, educate yourself, become, and it only takes 15, 20 minutes a day,
Yep.
but become as educated as you can, and then step into that role, but step into that role being the best that you possibly can be in that role. One of the things that I did, I talk about this in Step Up Your Teamwork. One of the things that I did when I became a deputy chief is I spent one day getting to kind of see how the team operates. And then I spent a day where I got everybody together and I talked to them about my expectations. And I don't remember word for word exactly what I said, but I know the essence of it. And what I told them was, I don't think I'm any better, any more experienced, or any, I guess, more knowledgeable in fighting fires than anyone in this room. The fact is, I learned a lot from many of the people in that room. I said, but I believe I understand what my position is and what my role is. And as a deputy chief, I believe that my role is to do everything in my power to make every decision I can to, God willing, get you home to your families at the end of every shift. But for me to accomplish that goal, there's something that I need in return from you. And I talked to them about expectations. I talked to them about training. I talked to them about some things we needed to change. And see, I started by letting them know that they're my first priority because they put the citizens of our community first in their eyes.
Right.
So they need somebody to look after them. Think about, like, my friend's a colonel in the Army, Thomas Felty, and he's in charge of our infantry down at Fort Benning, Georgia. I don't know if he's still stationed there now, but he was a year ago. And he said, look, everything that we do is to prepare the boots on the ground for success. Because if we can't prepare them for success, we're not going to be successful. And so my number one priority, he says, is the men and women of our infantry. and I served them so they could serve the United States of America. That's powerful
It is.
coming from an Army colonel. But how come a chief can't figure that out? How come a chief can't figure that out? And there's plenty of them that can't.
No.
They're not here to serve you. We're here to serve them.
Ugh. All right, Frank. That we're going to have to end it on that, because that is so powerful. I don't even know how to even translate or even put my 2 cents on it, because you're right. I mean, if we're doing the ultimate good for the end result of serving the citizens, we shouldn't have no ego. The mission goes first.
Listen, yeah, the mission goes first. Put your ego aside, because the day you leave the fire service, nobody's going to say, now that he's gone,
Right.
we're nothing and we can't function anymore. It's going to be business as usual the day you walk out. And if that doesn't humble you,
Yeah.
I really don't know what does. You know, there's a part of me that, when I left, I wanted them to say, man, we just lost the best deputy we're ever going to have. But at the end of the day, maybe they said that, maybe they didn't say that. I don't know. But at the end of the day, the one thing I didn't want is for them to say, we're not as good without him. I wanted them to say, you know what, we're just as good. We're prepared. We're great. I had the deputy that had taken my shift over, had called me probably 2 months later to praise that group and say, these guys are fantastic. They really, they're a solid group. They know their job. They do their job. They're disciplined. And he started saying all the things I knew about them. And I just loved hearing it, because the credit goes to them. They made my job easy. I held them to a high standard, but they exceeded that standard. And they made my job very easy. And I'm glad that, that transition is something that was easy for them, because, a new deputy comes in. It can't be an easy thing, because they have to learn the good and bad of that person too. What if this person comes in and expects something different, or treats us differently, or is unfair, or worse, what if he comes in and he doesn't hold us to a high standard? Are we going to let our guard down and say, hey, you know what? We don't need to do this anymore. We don't need to train for 3 hours anymore. And then they lower their own standard. The officers that I worked with, Ryan, the captains specifically, because you were talking about captains, man, I'll tell you what, I feel that for much of my career as a deputy, I've had some of and many of the best officers on our job, and I'm very, very grateful for that. That was a gift. It was a gift to have the officers that I had, because they worked hard, they trained hard, they took care of each other. Did we have problems? We had problems. Of course we did. How could you not? You get, 10 firefighters in a room for 24 hours, something's going to go wrong, but we worked through it, and we worked together, and we cared about each other. Even if we had conflict, we resolved it, because that's what we do. Think about this, and we really should end on this thought. We exist to solve problems. That's why a fire department exists. We exist to solve problems. How good are we at solving problems if we can't even solve the own problems within the 4 walls of our station?
That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I call a Frank Viscuso bomb. Maybe it's time for us to listen to this podcast and go back and have some hard conversations with ourselves.
Yeah, that's where it starts. It starts with the difficult conversations and setting some expectations, and then working. And what I love is this: set a goal, the same goal that my baseball teams all set, and the same goal that my fire department team set. Set a goal that every single time you come together, you're a better version of the team you were the last time you were together.
Man, I think
that goal. First of all, if you can't set that goal, you have no business being a professional.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. You're only a professional if you set at least that goal. So set that goal and work to become better today than you were yesterday, and better tomorrow than you are today. And now you're on your way to success in any arena that you choose to compete in.
I'm looking forward to it. I am, Frank. I mean, if we take that last suggestion to make it just a little bit better next day and take it to when we walk in the firehouse, or whether you're coaching basketball, or maybe it looks like I might be headed back to swim coaching again. I just think that's it. I mean, I'm going to embrace the journey, as Gary Vee says. I'm going to embrace the journey of being the boss, and I'm telling you, my team is going to perform at a high level because I want them to push me, and I'm going to push them. Because you know why? Because I'm going to step up and lead. Thank you, Frank, for once again dropping an amazing podcast. How do you do this? I mean, this is like liquid gold pouring out of your speakers right now, listeners.
Hey, what's funny is that people don't realize this, but when you and I talk in the airport or at FDIC or wherever it is, these are our conversations.
They really are.
This is it. When I say, listen, Charleston, West Virginia, I have to say this every time we're on a podcast. You're out there in West Virginia. I'm a city boy. I grew up in New Jersey with a view of the Manhattan skyline, but I went to school in Charleston, West Virginia, and I love it. I can't wait to come back, go to Pies and Pints, and get myself by the way, Pies and Pints is the only place outside of New York, New Jersey, or my area, Philadelphia, that I've ever had a pizza that I liked.
Really?
So it's a very good pizza. Now, Chicago, too, obviously makes pretty good pizza.
Right.
But yes, so you guys got something special out there in Charleston, so enjoy it.
Man, I tell you what, one of these days you're going to have to bring your family down and do some whitewater rafting with us. We've really started getting into whitewater rafting again, man. I'm telling you, world class down here. World class.
Would love it. Would absolutely love to do it, my friend.
All right, Frank, give the listeners a quick shout out where you'll be, how to contact you. I know you've got all your books out there, and I'll make sure to put links in there for all of those. But you got any classes coming up? And
I don't want to tell you where I'm going to be. I'll tell you how to contact me, and here's why. Because by the time this podcast or someone listens to this, I'll probably be done with some of these engagements. Just came back from Austin, Texas. I'm going out to Minnesota, going out to Florida after that, Carroll Stream, Illinois after that, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Ohio, New Mexico. That's all before the end of this year. But I have on my social media platforms, but you can check out Step Up and Lead, the Facebook page. If you like that page, I always post where I'm going. And then it's my name everywhere else on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, just Frank Viscuso. But I am on a mission to bring either a keynote seminar or leadership or officer development workshop to every state in the United States. I go overseas a lot as well, but there's 16 states that I haven't spoken in yet. And if you go on any one of those platforms that I just mentioned about, you'll see a map. And if anybody has interest in any of those states, I'd love to come in. First of all, I'm still going back to the ones that I've always been to. I go to Texas and Florida quite a bit. But I'd like to try to bring this message to every state. So hopefully, if anybody has any interest, feel free to look me up. And certainly my books are available through Fire Engineering Books and Video, or just my website, frankviscuso.com. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Man, thanks for being a friend, Frank. It's so funny that you meet people along this journey that you really connect with. And I really think you and I just have this great connection. We talk and text. I normally got to figure out what time zone you're in, but I really appreciate your friendship more than anything.
Well, that's right back at you, buddy. Right back at you. And thank you. And you've always been a supporter of this message from day one. And, I've always been a supporter of your message from day one. And it's just good to be on this journey with guys like you. So thank you, Ryan.
All right, that's it, everyone. We'll put a bow on podcast number 103. I still can't believe that we've got 103 episodes of Jumpseat Radio floating around out there. Make sure that you check out all the Frank stuff. Where's Ryan going to be? We're heading up to the Kevin Apuzio. I'm coming to your hood, Frank. I'm coming up to New Jersey to the Kevin Apuzio fundraising training event, and then I'll be down in Nashville, Tennessee, helping out our good buddy Peter Matthews at Firehouse Expo 2019. And then we're headed up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to share the hoarding message. And just like Frank said, if you're interested in hosting either a hoarding class or aggressively positive, you know how to reach me. It's everything at jumpseatviews@icloud.com. We'd like to thank Frank once again for coming on the podcast. And make sure you tune in next week for episode number 104. All right, that wraps up another episode of Jumpseat Radio Podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Jumpseat Training. If you're interested in hosting a Fighting Fires and Hoarding classes or the new session, Aggressively Positive, make sure to hit us up at jumpseatviews@icloud.com. Head on over to iTunes and leave us that 5-star rating so more people can join the Jumpseat Nation. We'll see you soon, and we'll see you next week.